adventure, sports, outdoors. With host Harry Canterbury.
There I was, back in the wild again, and I felt right at home where I belong. I had that feeling coming over me again, just like it happened so many times before.
Hi, Harry Canterbury with another edition of Adventure Sports Outdoors. Join us today as we go to Galesburg, Illinois to see the largest collection of German Lugers in the world. These guns were brought back by RGIs during the Second World War. A lot of these guns were captured off of the Germans, and also a lot of them were picked up on the battlefield. I think you're going to find this an extremely interesting program about the German Luger. Also, we're going to also take a look at the K98 22 Mauser Mitchell rifle. This rifle was used to train the Wehrmacht and the SS prior to World War II. There was a treaty between all the people that were fighting in World War I that Germany should never ever have a caliber rifle that was capable of using in an assault manner. So Adolf Hitler figured out that if I made a 22 caliber rifle, I could get away with it, and he made it in the fashion of the K98 Mauser. And this is also the largest collection of 22 Mauser rifles in the world. We're also going to talk to a young man from Manitou, Illinois, Josh Garber. He is quite the fisherman. He fishes Spring Lake and has caught a lot of bass. He's got some secrets and he's going to share them with you. So we're going to show Josh, and we're also going to go down and take a look at some of those fish.
Adventure Sports Outdoors, brought to you in part by Corsaw Lumber, manufacturers of quality hardwood products, buyers of standing timber in Smithfield, Central Pool Supply, everything from pools to pool tables and much more in Peoria on West Pioneer Parkway.
Michael O'Brien Commercial Real Estate and Recreational Ground, Remax Unlimited Commercial.
Kelleher's Irish Pub and Eatery, located on Peoria's riverfront, open 11 a.m. daily. And by Allwyn & Sons Meat Company. Our thanks to all of these sponsors.
Hi, Harry Canterbury with another edition of Adventure Sports Outdoors. We're at a special place in Galesburg, Illinois at Simpson Limited Firearms Collectors. This is one of the largest, if not the largest, Luger dealer in the world. These guns were brought back from World War II and World War I, and you're going to get to see the largest collection of these fine pieces of work right here in Galesburg, Illinois. I'm here at a candy store for gun enthusiasts. This is really something to see. The largest Luger dealer in the world in Galesburg, Illinois. And I'm here with Bob and Brad, his son Simpson, who started this business, what year, Bob?
Oh, I started in the 50s, I think, advertising in the Shotgun News in the late 50s.
How did you get the enthusiasm and the interest to get into the Luger end of it?
When I was a kid, my dad was a school teacher. We didn't have a lot of money, but my dad drugged me to gun shows from the time I was old enough to walk, and everybody was collecting Colt percussions and Civil War guns, which were expensive, and really didn't have the money to buy something like that. But, you know, the vets had World War II souvenirs, and Lugers particularly. I kind of got interested in Lugers because they were not expensive, usually somewhere between $20 and $50.
My goodness, what's a gun like that? What's a gun like that worth today?
I remember selling a set with 2 matching mags, a holster, just the way it was issued, when I was in junior high, I sold it for $45, and a set like that just sold on Julia auction for $7,500.
Wow, these things are worth a fortune now.
Well, they've appreciated as much as other investments. I think a lot of my customers that have recently sold their collection have said they did better on their guns than they did on their real estate and their stock and bond investments. A gun I had very recently was actually the first production Luger, serial number 1. It had come out of Switzerland, and the Swiss contract of 1900 Lugers were the first Lugers made in production. And I actually had serial number 1, and I sold it last year, but it was very interesting, especially when some friends of mine that are doing a book found an archive from Mauser, and they found the original glass plate photograph of that serial number 1 at the time it was made.
Well, that's got to be pretty cool. Now, that was produced by Mauser Company, is that correct?
DWM, Deutschwaffen Munitionsfabriken.
Which later became Mauser.
Yeah, it later became Mauser in the 30s.
In the 30s, yeah. Well, we're going to take a tour of this candy store for gun nuts. It's beautiful. I mean, this is probably one of the largest collections of military weapons that has ever been accumulated in one spot in the United States. They have everything from World War I, Civil War, the War of Spanish-American War. Virtually every war that America has been involved in, there is a piece of it in this building, and we're going to take a nice tour. We're also going to see a gun that was used by a guy by the name of Bobby Dunlap, who is a native of this area and who has quite a history, and he received the Medal of Honor, is that correct?
Honor, that's correct.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Bobby Dunlap was actually one of the few guys that received the Medal of Honor on Iwo Jima that lived to receive it. And I knew him because he was my junior high math teacher at Warren School outside of Monmouth. So I spent 2 years in his classroom and heard many war stories from him and many stories about the gun.
And that's the gun right there, Brad, right?
Yes, it is.
Can you tell us a little bit about that gun? I never knew about this until I came here about a year ago, or 6 months ago, and saw the gun.
This is the very gun that Bobby Dunlap carried on Iwo Jima. And, you know, when I was in high school or junior high, if you went to his house and said, you know, hey, I'd like to see your Medal of Honor, he would say, no, what you really want to see was my gun. You know, this is what saved my life on the island. And it's actually a rare gun. The Johnson was not issued to many people in World War II. Most of them had M1 Garands, which was the same caliber, same idea. It was on a semi-automatic rifle. But this one is serial number A0009. So it's one of the first ones made. And yeah, a little bit different design, you know. It's got a rotary magazine. The biggest complaint with these guns was if you dented the magazine, it wouldn't feed. So other than that, you know, he used it and said it was very accurate, and for him it was very reliable.
So that particular gun was used in combat, and
this was his gun used in combat.
In combat.
Yes, and he got the Medal of Honor for going out ahead of our lines, and he actually hid in a bomb crater and was directing artillery fire because the Japanese had emplacements all over the island, and he was in a spot where he could see what the guys behind him could not see. And of course, they tried to pick him off for, I think it was a couple of days. And they would send out patrols to get him, and he was defending himself with this rifle. And he ended up getting shot about 3 or 4 days in. But in the meantime, he directed artillery fire for a couple of days from that spot. They even tried to get him with mortars. But the thing is, the ash and sand on the island was so light that a mortar actually went into the ground underneath him, and when it blew up, it just blew him out of the crater, but didn't injure him, just dazed him.
Imagine that this gun was used in combat and killed a lot of Japanese is really
Yep.
cool. Really cool. This is I mean, for guys like me, you know, I love military history. I love guns, and always have. And the Luger, of course, my whole life has been, I never owned one, but I've always liked to look at them and read about them. And they're just a neat gun. I have a lot of questions about them and curiosity. But during the 60s, 70s, and 80s, a lot of veterans were just getting rid of them. They didn't have anybody to leave them to, or they needed a few bucks and they brought them in and sold them. Is that where a lot of them came from originally?
Yes, back when I was younger, a lot of vets would bring guns to gun shows. They'd bring their Lugers, their P-38s, and you would buy from them, and they'd tell you where they got them, how they got them, you know, what battle it was. Or sometimes, you know, they traded for them on the ship coming back, or sometimes they even, you know, bought one after the war from one of their buddies who got one. But you don't see those guys anymore.
They're either gone, and most of them are gone.
Right. When somebody brings in a Luger that has not been through a dealer to a show, it's generally the son or the grandson.
Which is kind of sad to
Sure.
see them dispose of something that their father thought a
Right.
lot of and
Right.
brought home.
Exactly. Yep.
How many Lugers did they make? I mean, within within a realm of, you know, just a guess.
I would guess 2 or 3 million. You know, there were 8 different factories. There were different variations made over the course of 45 years for commercial and military service. Not all of the records are available, so you know, I'm guessing
Lots.
They made a lot of them.
Who carried Lugers?
That was the standard issue sidearm for the German military in World War I and World War II.
So
Now, not everybody. You know, in World War I, they may have had a broom handle Mauser, but in World War II, they may have carried a P-38. The P-38 replaced the Luger. It had a visible hammer. It was double action, and you know, it was and it was less expensive to make too.
There's people watching the show right now that are World War II vets, and let's say they have one. What determines the value of a Luger from being just a common Luger and one that is worth quite a bit of money?
Well, what you have there, this is a standard 4-inch barrel. The interesting thing about this gun, if you look at it, there's no manufacturer. There's a code 42. In World War II, of course, we were bombing the German factories. So they decided to code everything. And one of the things that determines value is what code it is. It tells the manufacturer. Of course, you've got the date on the chamber, and they also coded the date sometimes. But who the manufacturer is, when it was made, the configuration, you can see this one has a 4-inch barrel. They also, you know, the Navy was issued 6-inch barrel guns. This is an artillery, which has a 8-inch barrel. And then, and what makes this gun extremely desirable is that it's got both matching magazines. It's got the original holster. The Germans were very methodical about everything, and they numbered the magazines to match. And actually, the Luger, there was a lot of hand fitting. They didn't have the mass manufacturing down to where you could easily interchange parts and they would function properly. There was a lot of hand finishing, and you know, they go together very precisely, like a lot of German things. And anyway, so to prevent the guys from mixing stuff up, they numbered every part on the gun. So, you know, when you take the gun apart, you will find numbers on everything down to the firing pin. Actually come apart pretty easy, and that's the last part. You open it up and you can see the number inside.
If a guy wants to buy one, just an average Luger, just the run of the mill, what kind of price should a guy pay for one?
An original all-matching military gun in decent shape is going to start at about $2,000. And then, you know, depending on the condition, depending on the manufacturer, depending on the configuration, they go up from there. This would be, say, a $2,500 to $3,000 gun, except it's got both the original matching magazines. And those were the first things.
And also the holster.
Yes, the holster. The holster is not numbered to the gun, so it can be
any holster
replaced.
can work.
Right.
So there's no way to tell if that was original or not.
Right. But the magazines are specifically numbered to the gun. And, you know, they got dumped on the battlefield. They got switched around. To find both matching magazines on the gun with the holster is very rare. And, you know, we've got this gun priced at almost $6,000.
Because of the matching.
Because it's all complete
correct.
and it's original.
All correct.
Yes.
Now you're telling us your father had a collection of 22s?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
what's that about?
When Germany signed the Versailles Treaty, they were basically demilitarized. They could not manufacture any military cartridge weapons. Now, when Hitler took over in 1933, the first thing he wanted to do was to militarize Germany, but he did not want to violate the treaty at first. So, in order to both start training an army and to train the Hitler Youth, and at the same time to start building up the factories in Germany back into gun production, he started a program with training rifles. And these rifles were 22 caliber, but they were the size and dimensions of their 8mm military rifle. So all the different factories geared up to make these training rifles, but what they were really doing was tooling up to
start another war.
Right, to start a war.
Okay, let's go take a look at those 22s.
Okay, let's do it. This is a Gustav KKW. As you can see, it looks very much like a Mauser 98K. It's about the same weight, same dimensions, similar bolt action, similar sights, but it's 22 caliber. And this one was made by Gustav. Interestingly, Gustav was what was left of Simpson, S-I-M-S-O-N, which was a German spelling. When Hitler took over, he took all the factories that were Jewish owned and nationalized them. And Gustav was a Nazi who was assassinated in Switzerland. So they basically stole a Jewish firm and named it after a Nazi martyr, and you know, just kept going. But there were several different manufacturers, this one being Gustav. There were several different variations, this one being a KKW. But the idea was to tool up for military production by making 22s. My father has over 1,200 of these. He's been buying them at shows and buying collections for 30 or 40 years, and this is the largest collection in the world. We're also using this collection as a reference collection for the book that we're putting together and hope to have published soon.
This has been a wonderful little trip here in Galesburg. We saw two of the world's largest collections of Lugers and 22 German training rifles right here in Galesburg, Illinois. I have to thank Brad for the tour. It's been really interesting and a really cool place, and you need to come over here and take a look at all the things that they have at Simpson Limited Firearm Collectors. Thank you.
Thank you.
You bet.
Hope to see you again.
You bet.
Hi, I'm Dave Barth with your Sportsman's Tip of the Week. We've talked about concealed carry in the past. It's as popular now as it ever has been. Here's some new examples of some concealed carry handguns. Here's a few examples of some new semi-automatics. If you're going to practice a little bit, a semi-automatic would be a good choice. They require a little more effort than a revolver. The first one here is a Ruger LC9S. It's a small, compact 9mm, made in the USA. The next one is a Sig Sauer. It's a P938 9mm. They also make them in a 380. They're expensive, but they're quality pistols. Right next to that, we have a pistol from Springfield Armory in Geneseo, Illinois. This is an XDS 9mm. They come with a hard case and 2 magazines. They also make them in a 40 caliber. Nice, compact, yet a lot of firepower. The one on the right here is a Smith & Wesson Bodyguard. It's a 380. It comes with a built-in laser, and again, made in USA. A couple of nice revolvers are Smith & Wessons. This is a titanium cylinder 337, real lightweight. And right next to it, at a more economical price, is a Smith & Wesson Model 637 with an alloy frame. Excellent choices, good reliable handguns. We also have holsters that are somewhat new on the market. And the first one here is, they call it a sticky holster. It's an inside the pant holster. And they call it a sticky holster because it's sticky. You know, it grips the gun, grips your pants and your shirt. If you'd like a belt holster, this is a Bulldog belt holster. It holds the pistol and an extra magazine. Next to that, we have a Bianchi Pancake holster, which kind of breaks up the outline of the pistol, mounts on the outside of the belt. And then we have shoulder holsters and ankle holsters. I'm Dave Barth. That's been your Sportsman's Tip of the Week.
Now we're going to see a guy by the name of Josh Garber from Manitou, Illinois, that knows how to knock 'em dead down at Spring Lake. I'm here with Josh Garber from Manitou, Illinois. And you know, fishing is one of my favorite things to do. I didn't get to do a lot of it this year, but we're letting the younger generation do it. And Josh lives down near Manitou, Illinois. You know, I fished Spring Lake since I was a little kid. I grew up there in the 60s. We had a cottage down there. Every weekend in the summertime, we spent it at Spring Lake. I learned how to swim there. Met my first girlfriend down there too, and fished and hunted. Spring Lake was paradise for a young guy that likes the outdoors. You've evidently got to follow in my footsteps, but getting down in that moss, and there wasn't that kind of moss back when I was your age or younger. And I know fishing for bass and all that moss and all that trash in there, those weeds, is really difficult. Tell us how you do it. And you're not in a boat either.
Well, I just walk the road. And first off, I'm using 17 to 20 pound fluorocarbon, that Seagar and Vizix stuff.
So you're using a pretty heavy line.
Yeah, and I'm focusing primarily on the lily pads, running my buzzbait along the edge of the lily pads, finding holes and big grass mats. And I'm just working that over the pads and over the grass mats, and then they usually hit it when it comes off the pads. So
what about getting the fish out? Because you know a bass will immediately go for some cover and get wrapped around something.
You gotta get them ripped up.
You gotta pop them out of there now.
A lot of guys, I mean, if you're fishing just lily pads and real thick lily pads, I'd recommend using braid. But if you're in open water, those fish, I think they tend to see that braid, and you lose a little bit more bites. But I like the fluorocarbon. I've been really impressed by it.
What's the test on it?
So I've used 17 to 20.
17 to 20.
Yeah. When them bass hit and they're in the lily pads, you gotta get them lifted up over it, or else
otherwise they're gonna wrap up.
They're gonna wrap you.
And you're gonna lose it. I'm sure you lost a few.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully the bass that are in the pads follow you out to the edge of the pads. That's where I'm getting most of my hits.
What's the biggest fish you caught down there so far?
7'11".
7'11".
Yeah.
Man, you're right on 8 pounds.
Yep.
Really pushing it. That's a big fish.
It is. I'll tell you what, if you've never fished topwater before, and after that first bite, you'll be hooked you'll be hooked for life.
I know. I fished topwater down in Mexico at Lake Mateos, and we used to catch 100 bass a day.
That's
and
fun.
we'd switch to topwater baits towards the evening,
Yep.
and there's nothing like running topwater bait and having a bass strike. It is really exciting. Maybe we'll get to go fishing with you down here sometime.
I hope so.
Well, I do too. Of course, duck hunting is in full swing right now. I haven't done too well, but I'm going to give her a go. Used to go up to North Dakota to Minot, Max Bass, just 15 miles south of the Canadian border. But we also used to go over to Devil's Lake. And Devil's Lake is a large lake, and it is one of the favorite places for Midwestern guys like myself and this young guy to go hunt and fish too. Tell us about your hunting up there this year. Shot some mallards and what else?
And some gadwall and bluebill and spoonbill, a lot of blue-winged teal, and a few widgeons, a couple pintail. It was a good week.
So when you got done hunting, you went fishing too, right?
I fished most of the time, actually.
You did?
I was fishing my waders most of the time, catching northern.
No kidding.
A lot of northern up there.
Did you guys eat any of the northern?
Yep.
They're pretty good if you
Yep.
get the Y bone out.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I love to eat northern. They're good, and a lot of people don't know that. But,
They're really good.
I'll tell you what, a combo fishing and hunting trip at North Dakota is always a lot of fun.
Yep.
Now we're going to show you some pictures of some of Josh's fish that he's caught this year.
Adventure Sports Outdoors, brought to you in part by Corsaw Lumber, manufacturers of quality hardwood products, buyers of standing timber in Smithfield, Central Pool Supply, everything from pools to pool tables and much more in Peoria on West Pioneer Parkway.
Michael O'Brien Commercial Real Estate and Recreational Ground. RE/MAX Unlimited Commercial.
Kelleher's Irish Pub and Eatery, located on Peoria's riverfront, open 11 a.m. daily. And by Allwyn & Sons Meat Company. Our thanks to all of these sponsors.
It's always neat to watch these young folks go out and catch fish. I've done a lot of fishing and been with a lot of people, but Josh does a great job. And if you like the outdoors, hunting and fishing, be sure to pick up a copy of Adventure Sports Outdoors magazine at your local sporting goods store. And you can also read it online at asomagazine.net and asomagazine.com. We'll see you next month.